This podcast is sponsored by Anchor FM. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is literally the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First, it's free. Second, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many other platforms. You can make money from your podcast as well with just minimum listenership. It's literally everything you need to make a podcast, all in one place. And it's what we here use at The Struggle is Real. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Struggle is Real. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do a segment called Getting to Know Your Teacher. And today, we're here with Quinlan Orear, one of my personal favorite teachers. I didn't say that, though.
Hi, everybody.
So, Quinn, tell us a little about yourself and how did you get into film?
Well, I am a relatively new faculty member. This is my second quarter at Savannah College of Art and Design. I recently just moved here from New York City, where I lived for about 10 years. I'm originally from Central Illinois, though, a town called Champaign-Urbana, which is also where I went to undergrad. I got my undergraduate degree in theater at the University of Illinois, theater studies to be exact, with an emphasis on directing. And I knew that I wanted to be involved in film from a very young age. My parents were both professional actors, not while I was growing up, but prior to that, they had both been professional actors in New York and Los Angeles, respectively. My mom was actually the opening act for Andy Kaufman at the Improv for 2 years.
Fancy.
And my dad worked with actors like Jack Lemmon, Henry Winkler, and others. And they met and relocated to Central Illinois for their 30s, I believe. Anyway, so I grew up in a very creative household. We were constantly doing theater. We were doing community theater all the time. My mom would direct and my dad would act, and so I grew up in a very creative household. And I always knew that I was going to be involved in a creative discipline in some capacity. And I actually started making films from a very young age. When I was 4 years old, there's footage of me giving instruction to my father, who's behind the camera, on like what to do and how to position the camera, and getting very, very upset when he would not cut, when he did not turn the camera off when I told him to, because I knew that I needed my cut points to be, all right, camera has to cut here so that when we roll camera the next time, right, I was having to cut in the camera. And so since he did not turn the camera off when I told him to, I had a complete meltdown, and that tape still exists, despite my best efforts to destroy it.
I'd love to see that tape one day.
Yeah. Join the club. I continued to make movies and actually made a feature film when I was 17, which is not very good, but it was the best learning experience I've probably ever had in terms of just learning through hard knocks. After I graduated from the University of Illinois with my BFA in theater, I moved to New York to get my MFA from Columbia University in film production. And once I graduated from there, I worked as a producer, director, writer, and editor for the better part of 6 years in New York, working with a lot of short-form content, mostly narrative, but also worked a little bit on some features, also worked as a post-producer, specifically a digital intermediate producer for a post-production company called 1619, where we worked on a lot of independent feature films, some TV shows for HBO and Starz, and then ended up directing and producing branded segments for brands like Chase Bank, MetLife, Fisher-Price. And now I'm here.
So what was your film school experience like?
So my film school experience was interesting. I got my MFA from Columbia University, and I came in relatively young. I say relatively because most of my classmates were older than me. So most of my classmates had worked in the industry somewhat, or at least had some more practical professional experience. I graduated from my undergrad institution in August and started at Columbia in September. So I literally had a few weeks between degrees. And so I was coming in very young, very green. Although I had made a lot of films of my own, I did not necessarily have a lot of industry experience. So coming in, I was super excited. I mean, how are you not excited to be moving to New York and to be going to Columbia University and to be meeting all these amazing people? The department is pretty rigorous, and the classmates were... I had a really wonderful experience, but one thing I was not prepared for was the amount of resources necessary just to keep your head above water in film school, right? You come into film school and you're so excited to be there, and then you realize, oh, just like later in the industry, so much of it is about who you know and how you can leverage resources, right? And I didn't come from the same type of means as a lot of my classmates did, right? It being Columbia University, there were a lot of people that came from very affluent backgrounds who would have, crane shots in their directing exercises, right? And it was a little disheartening at times when you felt like you couldn't quite just keep up or get your voice heard above the noise.
Right.
One thing I'll say specifically, though, to my experience was the people that I met, not just fellow classmates, but also professors, was probably the biggest takeaway for me. I still keep in touch with classmates and with professors, and it's very supportive, and it was a wonderful environment, and I learned a lot. I will say, though, my undergraduate degree, where I studied theater and theater directing, I feel like that environment and that education actually gave me more of my personal voice as a director and a writer, more so than film school did. Film school was great to get a foothold in the industry and what may be expected of me later. Right. But it was the experiences outside of film school that actually gave me my unique perspective, or that which I consider makes me a unique artist.
Right. So you started off directing, right?
Yeah.
So how did you fall into the producer role?
So it's interesting. When I was at Columbia, I came in as a director, and I wasn't crazy about directing course that I took, and I was just kind of like bummed a little bit after a certain semester, and I was like, I'm going to be upset if I just have a continuation of these experiences. And at that time, the department was such where directors could only take very limited amount of producing classes, but producing concentrates could take just about all the directing courses, right? So I actually switched for my second year to be a producer because I actually had more options of classes to take. So I was able to take all the producing classes and all the directing classes, right? Oh, okay. So that's actually the practical reason of just why I switched, so that I had more opportunity to take a larger variety of courses. I'm really glad that I did. I graduated as a producer, and especially in this day and age of content creation, whether you're a director or a writer or a production designer, having a producerial sensibility is going to give you a level of autonomy that we've not necessarily felt the need to have until recently, in my opinion.
Okay. So what influences you as a filmmaker?
What influences me as a filmmaker is our shared fascination of the human condition, and that which makes us similar, that which puts us on the same level and plateau of understanding and empathy. So much of filmmaking and art is about unique perspectives and promoting voices that are underrepresented. And of course, that's something that I am extremely interested in. But in so much as we have a common understanding of each other, I think I know what has always interested me most as a filmmaker is stories that aren't necessarily commonplace, but stories that are adding to the canon of our understanding of each other and the human experience that links us all.
What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. What an impossible question for anybody who is in film or loves film to answer. I will say Billy Wilder's The Apartment is one that I come back to pretty regularly as a favorite movie. The experience of watching that movie kind of changed the way that I thought about the types of movies I wanted to make. Right. I love Wilder's simplicity and the elegance of his writing and the just deliberateness of his directing. I think Wilder is such a great case study for non-interventionalist directing, where the director is not inserting himself into the film and letting the story be told through the characters, through the dialogue, and through just very smart and intuitive camera placement. Right. I love auteurs. I mean, who doesn't love Scorsese? And you know, The Departed is also one of my favorite movies because every cut and frame and decision in that movie is so deliberate and so bold. I love it for that reason. But I'm not interested in making a movie like The Departed.
So what kind of movies are you interested in making?
I'm interested in making movies that are about interesting people that we sometimes take for granted or that we sometimes overlook, or we assign a one-dimensional attribute to. For example, I'm working on a film right now that is about a pre-op trans woman who essentially is robbed of her life savings, the money that she's been saving up to afford her sex change operation. And she enlists the help of another outsider in the small town that she lives to help her recover the money. And we see this extremely determined, extremely endearing woman do some less than reputable things to try and get what she wants. And when I talk about this movie to certain people, they go, well, wait a minute. Are we going to see this trans woman in a negative light? And I say, in certain scenes, yes, because she's a human who wants something desperately. Right. And when we want things desperately, we are sometimes tempted to do things that are not heroic, that are not emblematic of great, upstanding people. And it's kind of what I'm trying to explore with this is something that we used to call Sidney Poitier syndrome, right? Where, yes, Sidney Poitier could be a leading black man in movies like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and In the Heat of the Night, as long as he was infallible, right? As long as he had no flaw, then yes, then audiences could accept a black man as a leading character. And it wasn't until decades later that it was, well, that's not a fair character assumption to make. And that's not a fair imposition to put on somebody just because they're a minority. They have to be, they cannot be flawed. It is not representative of our experience as humans. So I'm interested in exploring kind of that third dimension of characters that we might be, I don't know, I guess, afraid to talk about them in terms of their humanity.
So how do you think the industry has changed over the years?
The industry has changed over the years by becoming extremely inclusive with regard to perspectives that used to be seen as risky to put at the center of a film are now, now they're actually, what's the word I'm looking for? Having a unique perspective has never been better. Right? So having a unique perspective or a unique backstory or something that is maybe a little taboo to talk about is now something that people are seeking, and that used to be seen as a risk. Now we can put front and center certain topics and certain characters and certain underrepresented communities where we can now build audiences around communities in a way that we never have before because of the ease of making movies and the ease of distributing movies and content in general. And that opening of the floodgates and kind of democratizing of content creation is pushing and pulling the industry in all of these new and exciting ways that, frankly, is scaring people. It's scaring people who have institutional stakes, right? Studios and large distributors and these other stakeholders that have a lot of stake in keeping the status quo are scared at all of this potential that's just rolling out.
So what would your advice be for film students who are thinking about maybe just moving to LA versus just creating their own content?
Well, it's difficult because it's difficult to make money in this industry, right? It's difficult to make money in any artistic industry. And a lot of the money is in LA and in New York. If you want to write for TV, if you want to write for a TV show that is currently on the air, you need to live in LA. Right? There's really no other way around that. If you want to write for a TV show, even the show Atlanta, right? The show Atlanta is written in LA, right? That writer's room does not exist in Atlanta. If you want to write for Archer, right? Archer is done here. All the animation is done here in Atlanta, but all the writing is done in LA. That being said, especially with the production boom that we're experiencing here in Atlanta and the government support behind filmmaking in Atlanta, content creators in Atlanta have a luxury that filmmakers outside of Atlanta that come in to just capitalize on the production resources don't have, and that's homegrown resources in a production hub, right? That should not be overlooked. I know just from experience, right? I can go and make a movie in Central Illinois easier than I can make it anywhere else. And that's because I grew up there, right? I know restaurant owners. I know people that own large houses. I know people that own production companies and have truck rental companies. If you have those homegrown resources and you happen to have those homegrown resources in a place that's already booming with production, then I would capitalize on those. Now, if you want to go work for something that already exists or fit into the gears of a system that is already churning, like the studio system or network TV, then absolutely you want to be in Los Angeles. But if what you're interested in is making independent content, then I don't think there's any better place to be personally.
So you stayed in New York for a really long time. So why move to Atlanta?
I stayed in New York for about almost 10 years. I can't say 10 years because 10 years is like the year when you get to call yourself a New Yorker, apparently, and I didn't quite hit it. So I always have to say nearly. It was like 9 years and 4 months or something. But anyway, I moved to Atlanta for a couple of reasons. One, I had an amazing career opportunity here at SCAD. And also, it was so appealing to move here because of the industry boom. When my film, Seeking Jack Tripper, was playing the festival circuit, it played at the Atlanta Film Festival. And my husband and I went to accompany the film, and we were here for about a week, and we fell in love with not just the city, but with the people. We met so many independent filmmakers here that are trying to create their own work in Atlanta. And the creative spirit was actually just contagious. We hadn't really felt that in New York for some time, because in New York, the creative circles that we were in, it was starting to feel very stale, and it was starting to feel very cyclical and a little stagnant. Whereas going to a new place where there's kind of all of this maybe naive, maybe idealistic excitement, right? It just generates the adrenaline that's required of doing good work and doing exciting work. And I'll say, since I've moved here, I've probably done more writing in the past 5 months than I had done in the past 2 years in New York.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, you and your husband, you guys, how do you guys keep a healthy relationship in this film industry, right? Because it gets like super chaotic and super crazy. So how do you guys manage?
Yeah, well, so a mutual understanding, right, is integral to any relationship. But especially in this business where you do not have set hours, right? When you do not have a 9 to 5, it's the antithesis of a 9 to 5. Understanding that, yes, of course, you want to be able to see each other more, and you want to be able to, count on one another to show up for dinner. Having the understanding that, well, if plans fall through, or if something is suboptimal, right? Just realizing and in the back of your mind, well, yes, that's not just affecting me, though, that's affecting my significant other as well. And having that mutual empathy is extremely important. Also, giving the benefit of the doubt just all around about any time that the other one is stressed, being a support mechanism for them is extremely important. So we've worked together on a few films, right? He does not particularly like set, which I can totally understand. He's a very talented actor and a very talented casting director. And so he's worked primarily on that side of things. He's also he's very good with story. And what I've found to be very helpful in maintaining a healthy relationship in this industry is find ways to work together, but without stepping on each other's toes, right? Being able to define strengths and also weaknesses, and giving each other room to emphasize and to explore those strengths is something that's been really strong for us.
So how did you guys meet?
We met when we were in 8th grade during a...
Oh, you guys knew each other for a long time.
Yes.
Oh,
so we met in 8th grade when we were in I think I was a freshman and he was in 8th grade, when we were doing a murder mystery dinner theater, a children's murder mystery dinner theater. That's what it was.
That sounds fun.
We were acting in it. And we're both from Illinois, right? So I had moved to Peoria, Illinois when I was 12, I want to say. And I had started doing theater, community theater there as well, and we did not go to school together, but we both did community theater together, so it almost felt like we went to school together. And so we grew up friends in the theater environment, but we had lost touch during college. He went to Chicago and then eventually New York, and I stayed in Illinois. But when I had moved to New York, he had already been here for, I believe, 2 years, and so I was just lonely in New York, wondering, I wonder who I know here. Oh, wow. And so I essentially reached out, asked if he wanted to hang out, and about 3 weeks later, we were dating.
Nice. So what are some of the challenges that you face in the industry as a gay man?
I have been extremely blessed in that I really have not experienced any sort of... I don't feel like any of the obstacles or the shut doors that I've experienced are a result of me being a gay man, right? I actually feel like I have been encouraged to embrace that part of me because it is something that is unique and is of interest and is of the zeitgeist right now. It's so great to not be an everyday ordinary person right now, because now more than ever we want interesting people. We crave unique perspectives and voices that are from the fringe. And I mean, we live in Atlanta, and I lived in New York, and like I've been in liberal hubs for the past decades, and even before that I went to University of Illinois, which is an extremely liberal college at the same time. So I've been extremely lucky in that I've not, since getting beat up in the 3rd grade, maybe I've not really experienced a whole lot of obstacles because of that aspect. Now, is it hard? Do you sometimes question whether things would be easier? Sure, but I also think that that's true of just about anybody.
So, what advice would you give to students who might be struggling with their sexuality?
Absolutely, reach out to support systems and resources that are provided by your university, whether it's here at Savannah College of Art and Design or wherever you're going to school, and also realize that now more than ever, it's an exciting time to be different. It's a really exciting time to be different, and you should be proud of that aspect of yourself, and you should see it as an opportunity to share with the world a unique perspective that maybe is undervalued but underheard, and realize that there's a lot of love out there.
Okay. I kind of want to circle back because you do
Totally fine.
a lot. So how do you manage your time, and how do you keep from like losing your cool?
Great question. I don't know if I manage my time well. I try to, right? We all try
You
to.
say you wake up at like 4 a.m.
do.
and I definitely get emails from you at 4 a.m. in the morning. So I don't know.
So that's a new thing for me. I've always been an early riser, right? Before, when I lived in New York, I'd probably get up around 6. The 4 a.m. thing is new for me, but I've really fallen into it, and now I even woke up at 4:30 this morning, even though I didn't have to be anywhere until 11. I made myself go back to sleep until 7, and so because today I got to sleep in a little bit. But the Monday through Thursday thing for me, I approach everything from like a production mindset, right? Monday through Thursday, those are my class days, and I'm on set, right? I'm on production. So when I'm on production, if my call time is 7 a.m., which my first class is 8, I always try and arrive at the building at least an hour early. So my call time is 7, and when I'm on set, I need to be walking onto set as an example for the rest of the crew. Right, so when I walk into this building, I need to be an example for all of my students. And so I can't be an example if I am groggy, if I am still responding to emails, if I am distracted. So for me to get to cut through all of that, get my necessary caffeine dosage, right, which is about 3.5 cups these days, which probably is not the best thing for my blood pressure. But then 4 a.m. is my time because I need to prep for my daily classes. I got to get back up on my correspondence. I got to walk the dog. I got to make breakfast. I've got to get ready. I got to shower and get into my suit. And I have to do something for myself, right? I always try and fit something in for myself. And just a quick note for all of you night owls out there, because I'm so the opposite of a night owl. When the sun goes down, I'm like, all right, that's about time to go to bed. There's not a more productive time, at least for me, than the hours between 5 a.m. and 6:30, because that is my time before anybody else is up, right? To do it, to get done whatever it is that I need to get done, right? And so if I'm working on a script, I can give myself a solid 45 minutes worth of unadulterated, pure focus time in those early hours of the morning. Now, I will say, going back to maintaining a relationship, time management plays into that as well, right? Because I love spending time with my significant other, obviously, and it helps to be able to say, okay, me time can also be us time here. And for example, last week we had the final showcase, and we did thesis defenses, and I had to watch about a dozen short films over the week, and my time got away from me, and I basically had the night before to watch 12 films. And so I also had not given the attention to my significant other that week that he deserves. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to make a film festival in our living room with these films, and we're just going to have fun, and we're going to watch these together.
That's
and it was
adorable.
a really great time. We popped popcorn, I got to talk with him about the films, which is really helpful when you're formulating what your feedback is going to be, to just bounce it off. And because, I maybe missed something that he was like, no, that was in there. You missed that shot. So finding ways to kill two birds with one stone is really good for time management as well.
So with you watching so many student films,
Yes.
What are some of the main issues that students have that they should address, or at least like go back and review?
It's a great question. The hard part about being a film student is all you're making is shorts, right? And all you're thinking about are features or TV, right? So you're constantly thinking about your professional identity when you leave film school, and that's either going to be creating features or creating television usually. Well, short films, unfortunately, are neither of those, right? The structure of short films is completely different than either of those. So what I see in a lot of short films is they try and make them mini features, right? They try and build out like this, this act structure that is that kind of mirrors a feature, and it usually results in there being too much, just it being just too fat. There's just too much stuff in there. Whereas the most successful short films that I've seen are taking just a slice of life or a existential question and digging into that question or digging into that one circumstance or scenario or group of characters and exploring it from different kind of microcosmic angles versus thinking, okay, I want this to be a proof of concept for my giant feature, right? That usually results in a really, really heavy and lopsided short film. The advice that I would give to anybody who's in film school and is making short films is get us in late and get us out early. Your audience is smarter than you think they are. You can lead them by the nose and be a step ahead of them simultaneously, right? Always track your film in terms of your audience's experience. What do you want them to know when? Right? It's good to drop your audience in and make them ask a bunch of questions for the first minute or two, and then you can build this active exposition over the course of of minutes 2 and 3, right? Where they're catching up. It's more exciting to watch something as an audience member when you don't see what's coming.
Right.
So I see a lot of short films kind of almost patting themselves on the back or indicating the joke before it happens or priming the surprise before it hits. And what I would challenge students to do is to think more in terms of how they want to devise an environment where their audience is a step behind constantly.
So what advice would you give to students who are trying to submit to festivals?
Keep it short and keep it super unique, right? If you can present something to a programmer that is 15 minutes or less, right? 10 minutes or less if possible, it's going to make it so much easier for that programmer to put it into a festival. Also, if you have a very specific tone or a specific perspective as a director, there's no better place to explore that and to build that out than a short film. I think too often, especially in academic environments, film students get bogged down by, okay, how can I just make a good movie? I just want to make a good movie. And that's hard enough to do, right? To just make a good movie. But usually how we make good movies, quote unquote, is by looking at other things that we consider to be good movies and then trying to replicate or borrow from. And we end up a lot of times with this kind of middle of the road, vanilla, quasi-mediocre, but safe and maybe good quality film that shows that, okay, great, we know how to watch things and to kind of replicate them. But that's not you.
Right.
That's not you. And the advice that I would give is keep it short and keep it specific to you, because that's what a programmer wants. The third thing that I would say is make your online presence bomb, right? Really have some strong social media presence and build out your film freeway or your without a box with behind-the-scenes photos and bios for your key crew and tidbits about production, and have a solid log line and a solid synopsis and a trailer. If you build all that stuff out before you start submitting, programmers are going to look at that and say, "Oh, this filmmaker is making my job so much easier."
Okay. Well, a lot of students are really nervous when it comes to crowdfunding or like just financing their film. So, what advice would you give to them on that?
Don't be nervous about that, but also realize that it is really difficult and it is going to be a full-time job for those 4 weeks that your crowdfunding is going on, okay? And also don't slap it up on Kickstarter or Indiegogo and think that strangers are going to donate to you. They're not. Strangers aren't going to donate to you. The purpose of running a crowdfunding campaign is so Susie from your third grade class comes out of the woodwork because she's now a lawyer and gives you $100, right? And you would never have thought to ask Susie for money. But Susie is a lawyer with a boring, 9-to-5 job, and she sees your life as an aspiring filmmaker and goes, oh, that's awesome. I really want to support that, That's why you make a crowdfunding campaign. And whether you need to be realistic about your goal, but also a lot of the students that I've talked to are like, oh, I don't know, maybe I can raise $1,000. I'm like, but your production budget is obviously going to be $4, so try and raise $4, And a lot of people get scared by doing the all or nothing model. To me, the all or nothing model is better because if I'm a person who's going to give money to a film, I want to make sure that my money is actually going to the film being created the way that it needs to be created, right? So if you say your goal is $5,000 and you only raise $1,000, right? And I gave you $50 worth of that $1,000. Suddenly I'm like, oh, my $50, where's that going to go? Because they only raised 20% of their budget. It is a full-time job, though, when that's running, and it takes a lot of prep ahead of time. You need to have a really clever video, right? Not high production value, not long. It should be 2 minutes or less, and clever, right? It should be well shot and well edited, and the audio is probably the most important part, because if you can't do that much, then why would anybody trust you with money to go make a larger piece?
Right.
But clever video, and a lot of specifics about the project, and also have a schedule for social media posting over the course of those 4 weeks, if that's what you're doing, and also have events scheduled. At least one fundraising event, I would say, put dead center in the middle of your campaign, because what happens is you launch and everybody that you've primed, right, all of your Facebook followers or whomever have been waiting for you to launch, and then you launch and you get like a nice boost right out the gate, then it plateaus. And to break through that plateau, I found if you do a fundraising event that is specific to the movie and kind of can build awareness about the movie, then you can walk around with the iPad with the little square card swiper in there and just have people give $10, $15, $20 donations right on the iPad to the Kickstarter. And then at the end, you've got to contact everybody in that final week, right? It's a lot of work, but I've been involved in five crowdfunding campaigns, all of which were $7,500 or more, anywhere between $7,500 and one was $20,000, I believe, and all of them were successful.
Cool. So I'm curious to know, what's the worst thing that's happened to you on set?
The worst thing that has happened to me on set was,
or like an on-set horror story.
That's a good question. Let me think of a good one. I can't say that one.
Tell me off the air.
Tell me off the air. So when I was early in my film school days and producing, I had a shoot that was going way long, right? It was the director, it took him, I believe, 6 hours to do his first setup. And we kind of realized, in the middle of the day that this day was going to go long. And on, I think, hour 11:30, I went up to the crew and I was like, hey guys, looks like we're going to go long tonight. Sorry about that. And the key grip was like, yeah, nice of you to ask us if that's okay, since we're not getting paid any overtime. Basically, I created a little bit of a coup among the crew, and they threatened to leave, and I had to basically apologize retroactively. And what I learned was, don't ever take people's time for granted, and you're going to go long, right? If it's not your first day, hopefully it's not your first day, but you will eventually go over. You will go over the amount of time that you told people it would take. You need to democratize that situation. You need to go to the crew and say, everybody, it's looking like we're not going to make the day. Now, we have some options. We can either come back here and go, and try and cram tomorrow, but This might just be a domino effect, or we can shoot for extra 2 hours tonight, right? I'm going to let you guys discuss this. I know that I would prefer for us to shoot tonight. We would obviously provide a second meal for you all. Overtime is not in our budget, however. So I'm going to circle back and we'll discuss this. We'll discuss this more in depth. You don't want to open that up to the whole crew. You want to open that up to your department heads, right? And then you come back and see what the department heads have to say. Most of the time, when I've done that, after I learned that lesson the hard way, it always comes back. Yep, we're going to suck it up, but we really can't make a habit out of this. Absolutely won't, right?
Oh shoot, I forgot the question I was about to ask. Oh my God, what was it? Oh, yes, I remember. So, with your theater background, what advice would you give to students on directing actors?
Oh my God. Okay, so that's
I think you knew my situation with the adult. I've talked about it before.
Yeah. So directing actors is near and dear to my heart, and I also think that quality of acting and casting in general is one of the things that student films suffer from most. Okay, and I don't think that's because actors are untalented. I think it's mostly because students aren't spending enough time and resources in casting. Right. Casting the right people is going to make your job so much easier on set because you're not going to have to make that person, you're not going to have to teach that person how to act on set or turn them into somebody that they're not on set, right? So 90% of directing actors is casting well, right? And the way that you can invest just more resources and take that process more seriously is to take more time, right? You should not be casting the week before you're shooting. You should be casting a month at minimum before you're shooting, and you should be doing multiple sessions because it's a numbers game, okay? Especially as student filmmakers, you need to see as many people as possible, right? The other thing is, if you have production budget, if you've got a little bit of money to throw around, it goes a long way. So right now, Dustin and I are gearing up to shoot a short over the summer, and we just posted our breakdown yesterday. We're paying the SAG deferred minimum, which is $125 a day. And we have, as of when I left this morning at, I believe, 9:30, we posted yesterday, in less than 24 hours, we have over 500 submissions.
Oh, wow.
And it's a specific character. And most of those submissions, or at least a lot of them, have come from actual agents submitting their talent because they want their actors to have better content for their reel. But they're not going to just submit them for anything, right? Especially if it's a student film, a little bit of money really goes a long way. It's the difference between and I'm not saying that people that work for free are bad actors by any means, but since it's a numbers game, if you can just give even the minimum of $125 a day for actors, you're going to get a whole different class of people come out for those auditions. In terms of directing actors on set, always keep it active. Always keep it intention-based. What do you want? What do you want? What are you trying to get out of this other person? Okay? How do you want that other person to respond to you with this line? That's how I approach just about every bit of my directing on set, right? So when I'm going through a script and I'm scoring the script, I call it, when I'm scoring it, I'm saying for each line, what is it that they want from the other person? And a little active verb. So if it's like decimate him or seduce her or intrigue, right? If you can assign active verbs, you're not going to need most of them because your actors are going to do a good job. But if your actor falters or it doesn't feel like a very specific or committed moment, then at least you've got that active verb and that intention, that want, right? To be able to pull up and say, hey, why don't you try to get him to do this, right? Try to get him to laugh with this line. That's super effective. If you can give your actor just a very simple, diluted, try and get the other person to do something, that's usually going to result in at least a very specific and guided performance.
I never asked you, but why did you want to teach? Or what made you decide to teach?
It's a good question. I came about it a little roundabout like. I didn't really imagine that I would be interested in teaching when I was in film school. And I think it was after this, I don't know. it was after a couple of years of doing that branded content stuff, I really missed the film world, right? I wasn't working in film as much anymore. It had been about a year and a half, I'd say, since I really had worked on a film project. I had my short film that was going around and winning awards at film festivals, and that was fun, but even that had shot like 3 years prior, at this point at least.
You have to send me that link so I could post it in the description.
Oh, okay. I will do that. We still haven't done our online release, but we need to.
Okay.
So teaching for me, I've always been really interested in mentorship, and I've been just by default I've found myself to be a giving and good mentor. Anytime I was working at either the post-production company or at the branded media company, I was always trying to give the interns a worthy experience and I wanted them to learn something. A lot of times when you're in those environments, the interns just get strapped with just the worst jobs, and there's nothing, they're not getting anything back. They're just like, happy to be here, and there's just that expectation that they're supposed to be happy to be there.
Right.
But having been an intern, I was very sympathetic, right? And so,
where did you intern? Sorry.
I interned at a post-production house called 1619, where I ended up being the.
That's where you ended up working.
That's where I ended up working.
Okay.
Yes, I did take a year off because I did take a year off between when I interned and when I ended up working for them because I had other film projects that I wanted to work on, and then I also interned with Philip Seymour Hoffman's production company called Cooperstown Films, which was a great experience, and I read a lot of scripts. So those are my two internship experiences, and they were both great. Like I don't mean to knock either of those, but I just know as an intern, right? I was very proactive. I was always looking for how can I help, but also what can you teach me, right? But if you're not proactive like that, and you're an intern and you're just waiting around for somebody to teach you something, you're usually not going to get it. So having been on that other side, when I was working and in an environment where we had interns, I would always try and find something interesting to teach the interns while they were helping me do something. And given that kind of just default behavior that I had, and I got a lot of satisfaction out of that, along with my estrangement from just like the film world that I loved and that I missed, I started thinking like, how can I leverage this skill that I have for mentorship with getting back into a formalized filmmaking environment. And I thought, well, I just need to become a film teacher because there's also not a better way to reacquaint oneself with a discipline and get back up to speed on everything that you might have missed than to become a teacher, right? Because now it's like, okay, that thing that that thing that I never quite learned. Like in film school, I never really learned what the circle of confusion was. I just knew that if you closed the iris, that that your depth of field was deeper, and if you opened the iris, it was shallower. I never knew why though. So the night before I was gonna do my lenses lecture, it's like someone is gonna ask me why, and I need to be able to answer with the actual optics. And so I learned it, and it took me the better part of 20 minutes to actually wrap my head around it. But by the time I did, and I now understand the optics, I'm such a better filmmaker because I put myself through that experience.
What is your ultimate goal or ultimate dream?
So my ultimate dream is to really continue on the path that I'm currently doing. I love to make movies, but I love to make movies on my terms, right? And that's not always the most professionally conducive way to work. So what I didn't anticipate, so I thought that I might be good at teaching, right? And I've proven to be all right at it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm okay at it. But what I didn't anticipate,
I just want you to know, on like every episode, like you've been shouted out. It's a thing now.
That's humbling. It is. It really is. What I didn't anticipate truly was how much personal satisfaction I would get from it. How fulfilled I would feel from teaching. I've really, really enjoyed it. It's been a fantastic. It's only been 4 months. I can't believe it's only been 4.5 months, but it's been a fantastic 4.5 months. I would love to continue providing mentorship and working in an academic environment while also creating my own films on my terms. And that's what I plan to do.
Okay. Everybody wants to know, Quinn, who's your favorite student?
Oh, yeah. There's no favorites. There's no favorites.
Lies.
Absolutely no favorites, just favorite
it's okay.
classes.
I'm your favorite. We'll just say that. We'll go with that answer. Or Ryan's your favorite.
There's no favorite students. There's just favorite classes, and that changes the ranking. The ranking poll changes on that on a daily basis.
Do you have any parting thoughts or anything you'd like to say to the audience?
What a fantastic thing you guys are doing. The community, the student community here at SCAD is really inspiring. It's something that I think you guys have a lot of potential, and you have such an amazing platform in order to seize all of this potential. And I would just encourage you to be bold and deliberate and make good things.
Awesome. Well, that's it. We're going to conclude this episode. Thank you guys for listening. Shout out to SCAD Atlanta Radio for giving us this platform. And also, sponsorship time. Definitely get your movie pass and your film struck. Yes, we're trying to get sponsored. Fingers crossed. And yeah, that's it. See you guys next time.